My name is Maris Ellery, and at 67 I still pack a car like I'm cataloging a library shelf, everything in order, everything accounted for. The cedar box rode beside me on the passenger seat, belted in like a fragile passenger. Inside were the things my mother once called the proof we were here, her locket, a pressed magnolia, and a recipe card written in ink that had turned the color of old tea. I had imagined placing it on the engagement table, telling Kira how her grandmother's hands smelled of flour and lemon peel. The road from Wilmington to Savannah stretched flat and endless. 9 hours of gray sky and pine. I rehearsed what I would say when I saw her again, trying to keep my voice from sounding too careful. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. You chose well. Simple words, but I had been saving them. When I finally turned onto her street, my back ached, but my heart quickened. The house was larger than I remembered. White shutters, a new brick walk. I parked, straightened my sweater, and carried the cedar box to the porch. Before I could knock twice, the door opened. Kira stood there, hair pinned, lipstick neat, her phone still in her hand. Her smile paused midway. "Oh," she said lightly. "We had the dinner yesterday, just close family." The words landed like small stones. For a moment, I thought she meant the rehearsal, or that she was teasing. But behind her, I could see stacked wine glasses and the faint echo of laughter fading down the hall. She didn't open the door wider. I nodded once, adjusting my grip on the box. I must have gotten the date wrong. She said nothing to correct me. The drive back was quieter than the one down. Dusk settled over the marshes, turning them the color of pewter. I stopped at a roadside motel with a vacancy sign flickering half-lit, left the car idling while I carried the box inside. It rested on the bedspread untouched, its brass latch glinting under the lamplight. I set my phone face down, slipped off my shoes, and stared at the dark window. The silence didn't feel empty yet, only paused, as if waiting for what came next. The air in the motel room smelled faintly of lemon cleanser and old smoke. I sat on the edge of the bed with the cedar box still unopened beside me, its weight a reminder that some things travel farther than they should. The lamp cast a yellow pool of light across the table, and without thinking, I reached into my tote bag for the old household ledger I'd kept for decades. It was a habit. I'd never broken pages lined with steady ink. Years of numbers that had once comforted me. I opened it to the back where the handwriting grew uneven, softer. There, in the margins. I began to list the help I'd given Kira over the years, loans that were never really loans, 2 semesters of tuition, first month's rent in Atlanta, the credit card balance from that emergency trip to Austin, deposits for the first wedding venue, canceled after 3 weeks of engagement. The totals blurred as I added them, the ink pooling slightly at the edges of each sum. My late husband, Paul, used to joke that I could balance a budget tighter than a drum. He'd been a patient man, steady even when money was thin. Once, after Kira called asking for another temporary favor, he set his hand on mine and said quietly, "Be generous. Maris, but never to your own disappearance." I'd smiled then, certain I understood. I didn't. Not really. Now, in the half-light, I ran my finger along the neat columns and felt the years pressed into them. I pulled a hotel notepad from the drawer and wrote a single line at the top. Stop being the overdraft of other people's dreams. The words looked strange, almost too sharp for the page, but I underlined them twice. The clock on the nightstand glowed 4:17. I opened my phone, scrolled through the accounts that linked to Kira's utilities, credit cards, a travel fund I'd set up for her. My thumb hesitated for only a moment before sliding each switch off. One by one, the auto payments went dark. Outside, dawn was just beginning to pull color into the horizon. I closed the ledger and placed it on the nightstand beside the box. the two resting together like truth and proof. Then I sat back, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, and waited for the quiet to feel like mine. 3 days passed before my phone lit up with her name. I was standing by the motel window, coffee cooling on the sill, when the vibration broke the stillness. The number looked unfamiliar at first, then I saw the area code. "Savannah. Mom," Kira said, breathless. "The card won't go through." "Did you forget to pay the balance?" Her tone was clipped, the kind she used when she was already sure I'd made a mistake. I took a sip of the lukewarm coffee before answering. "No, sweetheart." I remembered to stop. There was a silence so sharp it almost hummed. Then came the brittle laugh I'd heard 1,000 times, the one that used to make me give in. "Are you serious? You're just going to cut me off like that? You can't do that without telling me." "I just did," I said softly. "It was time." She exhaled hard into the phone. "That's petty." "Mom, you know the deposit's due tomorrow. Lachlan's family will think I'm not worried about what they'll think," I said. "You have your own accounts now. Use them." The line went quiet again, but I could hear the faint sound of her pacing, the echo of her nails tapping against the phone. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped lower. "I can't believe you'd do this over something so small." "It isn't small, Kira. It's everything I kept paying for so you didn't have to notice." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said what had been waiting at the edge of my tongue since the day she shut the door. "I warned you. Remember." The words hung there, steady, final. She didn't reply. The call ended with a soft click that felt cleaner than shouting ever could. I placed the phone on the bed, opened my laptop, and logged into my accounts. Her name appeared on 3 of them, each one tagged Authorized User. I hovered over the list for a moment, then pressed Remove. One by one, the entries vanished. The motel was quiet again, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand explanation. I leaned back against the headboard, closed my eyes, and drew a slow, measured breath, letting it fill the space that used to belong to her. When I finally drove back home, the air in the house felt still, as if it had been waiting to exhale. The curtains held the scent of lavender polish, and dust had settled in a thin, polite layer over everything. I unpacked slowly, each motion deliberate, like shelving books back in order after a storm. The cedar box went onto the desk by the window, its brass latch facing the light. I meant only to clear the surface, but a stack of old envelopes slid loose, scattering across the floor. Among them lay a photograph from last Thanksgiving, Kira in a green sweater, laughing at something beyond the frame. I turned it over, smoothing the crease down the center, and that's when I noticed it. The photo had been cut cleanly in half. My side of the table was gone. For a long time, I just looked at it. The neat edge wasn't angry. It was surgical. I could still see my hand resting near the salt shaker, a blur of my sleeve where the scissors had hesitated. That's what forgetting looks like when it learns manners. I murmured to no one. I slipped the half photo into the drawer, not out of sentiment, but record-keeping. That afternoon, Diane stopped by, her hair pinned back in the same no-nonsense way she'd worn it since our days at the library. She carried a small tin of lemon shortbread and the kind of silence that comes before careful questions. "You never did tell me how the dinner went," she said as I poured tea. I hesitated, then told her the truth that I hadn't been invited, that it had already happened. Diane's spoon stilled halfway through stirring. "Oh, Maris," she said quietly. "Then maybe it's time you stop paying for your seat at their table." Her words landed with the gentle precision of fact, not pity. I nodded, grateful for her refusal to pretend. That night, I sat at my desk again, the ledger open beside a fresh notepad. At the top, I wrote financial ties to be closed by month's end. Beneath it, I listed them one by one. When I finished, I underlined the title twice, capped my pen, and turned off the lamp. The house settled into its own rhythm, no longer waiting for footsteps that never came. The next morning, I took Diane's words at face value. By noon, I had made an appointment with Meredith Vale, a local attorney whose name I remembered from my years at the library. Back then, she'd spent weeks in our archives cataloging historical deeds, quiet, meticulous, the kind of woman who handled paper like it was evidence of faith. Her office sat above a florist shop on Habersham Street. The smell of cut stems drifted through the hall as I climbed the narrow staircase. Meredith stood when I entered, smiling with a familiarity that eased the tightness in my chest. "Maris Ellery," she said, offering a hand. "Still keeping things in order, I hope." I managed a small laugh, trying to. We sat across from each other at a tidy oak desk. I explained everything, the auto pays, the years of quiet generosity, the way Kira's name had threaded through my accounts like ivy. Meredith listened without interruption, jotting small notes in neat, slanted print. When I finished, she said simply, "Documentation isn't revenge, it's protection." The sentence landed like a key turning in a lock. She began outlining what we could change. First, revoke the durable power of attorney I'd signed after Paul's death. Kira's name removed, effective immediately. Second, update my will to include my niece Ellis, who'd never asked for a cent, and a small scholarship fund for local library students. Third, set up a gift ledger, a record of every loan, payment, and favor, labeled either forgiven or owed, not out of pettiness. Meredith said, but clarity. When she slid the documents across the desk, I felt the faint tremor of hesitation I used to mistake for guilt. This time, it was just awareness. I signed slowly, pressing each pen stroke into the paper like a small declaration of intent. "Good," Meredith said. "You're not cutting her off. You're drawing a line she can see." Outside, the late afternoon light filtered gold through the shop window. I bought a single sprig of rosemary from the florist downstairs, the scent clean and strong. By the time I reached home, the sun had dipped behind the live oaks, and the house no longer felt like an echo chamber. It felt like a boundary quiet, deliberate, and finally mine. 2 weeks passed before I heard from Kira again. The call came on a Sunday afternoon, her name flashing across my laptop screen. When I answered, her face appeared smiling, composed, the kind of brightness people put on when they want something. Beside her sat Lachlan, straight-backed, the kind of polite that feels rehearsed. "Mom," Kira began, "we just wanted to keep you in the loop about the wedding budget." Her tone was light, but the word budget carried a practiced weight. Lachlan leaned closer to the camera. "We've had a little change of plans," he said. "The first venue fell through, but we found another. It's perfect waterfront. Limited availability. The deposit's $4,800. We're covering as much as we can, but I already knew where it was headed." I folded my hands and let them finish. Kira smiled again. "We thought maybe you could help with just the deposit. It would mean a lot." I took a slow breath, letting their words settle between us like dust in sunlight. "I can contribute 1,000, I said evenly, "as my gift, not my guarantee." The pause that followed was sharp. Lachlan's expression didn't shift much, but the temperature behind it cooled. "Parents usually want the best for their kids," he said quietly. I met his gaze through the screen. "Exactly why I'm teaching mine the cost of best." Kira blinked, a faint blush creeping up her neck. "It's just everyone's expecting something special." "Then make it special for the right reasons," I said. "Not the expensive ones." She looked down, fiddling with her engagement ring. Lachlan checked his watch. The silence grew long enough for me to feel my own heartbeat slow. "I'll send the 1,000 when you've confirmed the venue," I added. "Not before." Her eyes flickered up at me. Unreadable. "All right." she said finally. When the call ended, the screen dimmed, leaving my reflection in the dark glass, older, steady, and still. The rosemary sprig from Meredith's shop sat drying by the window, its scent faint but unbroken. The call came mid-morning, just as I was pruning the rosemary by the window. A woman's voice, polite but tight, introduced herself as someone from Savannah Bridal Atelier. She thanked me for my recent guarantee on the gown deposit and asked when the payment could be expected. For a second, I thought she had the wrong number. Then she said Kira's full name, her order number, the date 2 days after our video call. My throat tightened, but my voice stayed even. I didn't guarantee anything. I told her. There was a pause. Mrs. Ellery, your name and phone are listed under the billing section. The remaining balance is due by Friday. I reached for my notebook. Please note this, I said calmly. No authorization was given. You will receive a formal denial in writing. After we hung up, I sat for a moment, the quiet of the house pressing in. Then I opened my laptop and drafted a letter short, factual, and final. To whom it may concern, I am not a financial guarantor for any order placed by Kira Ellery or associated parties. Any listing of my information was done without my consent. Please remove it immediately. I printed 2 copies, signed them in black ink, and drove to the post office. The clerk, a young man with soft eyes, weighed the envelopes and stamped each with certified mail. I slipped one into the outgoing bin and mailed the other to Meredith, with a note clipped on top for record keeping. That evening, I dialed Kira's number. She picked up on the second ring, her voice bright at first, as if nothing had happened. Mom, I received a call from the bridal shop. I said, you listed me as guarantor. A beat of silence. It was just a placeholder, she said quickly. They needed a name. And you've always— No, I interrupted. No contract, no payment. She didn't argue this time. I heard the faint sound of her breathing, the scrape of something shifting on a countertop. Then the line went dead. I opened my ledger that night, the one I'd started in the motel, and wrote a single line under the date paid in full lesson delivered. The words settled on the page like closure, firm and even. The night of Kira's rehearsal dinner arrived soft and humid, the kind of Savannah evening where the air itself felt like memory. I spent the afternoon setting the table in my small dining room white linen, the chipped blue plates Paul and I had found at a yard sale 40 years ago, candles low and steady. The house smelled faintly of rosemary and baked bread. For once, I didn't rush. At 7 sharp, the doorbell rang. Diane came first, carrying a bottle of sweet tea wrapped in a dish towel, her laughter filling the doorway before she even spoke. Behind her was my niece Ellis, all kindness and quiet curiosity, followed by Mr. and Mrs. Adair, my neighbors from next door, the couple who once borrowed sugar and stayed long enough to share their whole life story. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed the sound of voices that carried no expectation. We sat together as the sky deepened to indigo. The conversation wandered easily from garden pests to old library gossip to Ellis's new job at the Historical Society. Laughter moved through the room in small, genuine bursts, the kind that loosened knots you didn't know you'd tied. After dessert, I went to the desk by the window and lifted the cedar box. The brass latch clicked softly, a familiar sound that still felt final. I set it on the table and opened the lid. Inside, the heirlooms gleamed under the candlelight: the locket, the magnolia, the old recipe card. I used to think this was meant to stay in one line, I said, my voice steady. But legacy should go where respect lives. I turned the box toward Ellis. It's yours now. Keep it or share it. Just remember who you are when you do. Her eyes glistened as she reached out, tracing the edge of the box with careful fingers. I'll take care of it, she whispered. Diane raised her glass. To family, the kind you choose because they show up. We clinked glasses, the sound bright against the quiet hum of the night. Across the table, one chair sat empty, left untouched by design. The candle beside it burned low, steady, its light spilling gently onto the linen like forgiveness that didn't need words. Autumn came late that year, the kind that crept in quietly, softening the edges of summer instead of ending it. By then, the news had trickled through. Mutual friends, Kira's wedding had been smaller than planned. The guest list trimmed. The venue changed to a modest hall near the river. I didn't receive an invitation, though I hadn't expected one. Still, I wrote a short note on cream stationery and sent it without a return address. May it last longer than the dinner. No signature. Just handwriting she'd know. The following week slipped by without reply, and for once, silence didn't sting. It simply stayed where it was meant to, outside. The house felt alive again in its stillness. Morning light spilled across the table where the cedar box had once sat, now replaced by my ledger and a stack of letters from the Ellery Vale Scholarship Fund. Meredith had helped me finalize the paperwork. The first grant went to a library student in Charleston who'd written about preserving small-town archives. Reading her letter of thanks felt like placing something fragile back where it belonged. I filled my days quietly, organizing the attic, baking for the neighbors, sharing tea with Diane on the porch. Evenings carried a peace I hadn't recognized in years. No phone buzzing, no requests hidden in affection, only the slow rhythm of things staying where they should. One afternoon, a small package arrived from Ellis, a framed photograph of our supper night. 4 faces, lit by candlelight. One empty chair at the edge. Beneath it, she'd written in tidy script, "Thank you for showing me what keeps." That evening, as dusk turned the street lavender, I took the brass plaque I'd ordered weeks earlier from a local engraver. The letters were simple, unadorned. Welcome by respect. I fastened it beside the porch light, tightening each screw until it felt sure. When I stepped back, the fading sun caught the metal, sending a soft shimmer across the railing. I turned on the light. Its glow washed over the plaque, warm and steady, catching every letter as though confirming them one by one. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't just belong to me, it answered back.